So The Abominable Snowmen is a very notable serial. Coming off the back of back-to-back Dalek and Cybermen serials, it has a lot of pressure riding on it. But with the introduction of a new and iconic villain, this serial has made its mark on the franchise. Of course it's mostly missing with only one episode surviving, but even so there's plenty to unpack. So we begin on the side of a mountain, where Professor Travers and his friend have made camp, but during the night they are attacked by something, with Travers' friend being killed, his body having been mangled and his gun bent out of shape. There is a creepy atmosphere to this scene, but with it missing, it means that it does lack some of the intended atmosphere, as it lacks the characters' reactions. Either way, it's a great opening scene for the serial, as it creates a very tense tone with a sense of mystery. So for a little context, Travers is in Tibet looking for the Abominable Snowmen, with it being his life's work to find the creature, having already spent 20 years searching. This is how he ends up being a part of this serial, with him accusing the Doctor of killing his friend when they later cross paths. This also stirs the monk's suspicions, but we'll come to that later. The next day the TARDIS lands nearby, with the Doctor happy to find where they've landed, as he's been there before, about 300 years before to be exact. This leads to him wanting to return the gift he was given, the Holy Ganta of a nearby Datsen monastery. This is where the trio separate, with the Doctor going alone to the monastery, while the others are made to wait but refuse. Due to the cold, this introduces us to the second Doctor's iconic fur coat, which is what allows Travers to believe he is responsible for the death of his friend, with the monks believing that the Doctor is responsible for the Yeti's change of nature. The Doctor ends up as a prisoner of the monks, with him later being put out as bait for the Yeti, but he's saved when the Holy Ganta is returned by Tomney. At the same time, Jamie and Victoria find a cave containing a pyramid of spheres. Before a Yeti attacks them, they escape by dropping the roof on it before meeting Travers, with the three of them returning to the monastery to save the Doctor. Later, the monks alongside Jamie capture a Yeti so the Doctor can examine it. So that basically wraps up the majority of the first two episodes, with them being quite good. There's a good sense of mystery around the Yeti, with the characters not trusting each other because of it. We also get a fun few character moments between the trio when they're together in the TARDIS, and the Doctor is trying to find the Ganta. These two episodes are a bit slow in some ways, with the Doctor being locked up for a stretch, but it's good for the introduction of the main characters, with every major player being introduced. Characters I haven't mentioned yet include Songsten, the abbot, Kreesong, who is the leader of the warrior monks, and Padmasambhava, the High Lama of the monastery. Although it's not introduced fully until later, we have to mention the villain of this serial, the Great Intelligence. So the Intelligence is a being we don't actually see, and instead influences the serial through Padmasambhava, who he has been keeping alive for hundreds of years to enact his plan. A part of his plan was to create the robotic Yeti, to both terrorise the monks and do the work to create the Pyramid of Spheres, which will be used to give form to the Intelligence. The presence of the Intelligence throughout the serial is interesting, as it acts and speaks only through Padmasambhava, with it being a formless being which lives in distant space. The serial doesn't give us a lot of detail about the Intelligence, with it being quite a vague but powerful force. Now this is maybe just me, but I won't exactly call the Intelligence an evil creature here. While yes, it is an antagonist, and does many things which are considered evil including killing, its only motivation, as shown on screen, is to create a body for itself, with it even having the monastery evacuated prior to the process beginning, which wouldn't be something an evil creature would be expected to do. I mean, we don't know what it will do once it obtains form, so there is still reason for it to be considered evil, but either way, the Intelligence is the villain of this serial, and is a strong foe in terms of character, being more along the lines of the Toymaker rather than the Daleks. This does make it a very unique villain, which later serials will expand upon. So on to the characters. Let's begin with Songsten, as he is probably the least important overall. Not to say that he is an unimportant character, but he acts mostly as a servant for Padmasambhava, the hands of him if you will. On several occasions he is brainwashed and so acts on the orders of the Intelligence without knowing, with his memories erased afterwards. Now he is important as the hands of the Intelligence, as he is often used to influence the monks or to interact with the Yetis, but out of the main characters he is the most forgettable, with many others being more notable due to their presence. Now for Kreesong. So as explained earlier, Kreesong is the leader of the warrior monks, with him being the main threat to the Doctor and company at the very beginning, with it being him who decided to put the Doctor out as bait for the Yeti to see if he was responsible or not. Throughout the serial, he is the one who has a lack of trust in the trio, but as they begin to help them and sort out the situation with the Yeti, he starts to trust them, with his trust secured when he is attacked by Songsten. He often finds himself clashing with the monks due to him wanting to take action while they choose to meditate on things. Next we have Tomney, a younger warrior who doesn't possess the same instincts or perhaps recklessness as Kreesong, but is still a strong character in his own right. He is more patient than Kreesong, which is what allows him to give the Doctor the chance to explain his position, with him being given the Holy Ganta to take to Songsten. Then throughout the serial he backs up the Doctor and co, when he believes they're right, then spending a stretch looking after Victoria until she gives him the slip. As a character, he is the equal and opposite of Kreesong, being a younger version of him in a way, being more innocent and trustful against a hardened Kreesong, who takes longer to convince and who is always on guard, which is an interesting dynamic. Like with the others, he's not the most deep of characters, but his more naive nature does make him stand out against the rest of the older and wiser monks. Now for Travers. So as explained, Travers is hunting for the Yeti when he was attacked. So Travers is the only non-monk character to be in the serial, other than the trio of course, which does make him stand out, and it gives him a different point of view, that view mostly being to be distrustful of the Doctor at the beginning and going after the Yeti no matter what. He isn't anywhere near as wise as the monks, often being a lot more likely to put himself in danger by going out of the monastery, sneaking out in the later episodes, which leads to him having an encounter with a great intelligence. Once he's calmed on the trio, he is a much nicer character, with him helping them from time to time. By the end he's on good terms with them, with him being somewhat defeated by the fact that the Yetis are robots. Like with most others in the serial, he isn't the most rounded of characters, but he's still a strong one. So on to the main trio, beginning with the Doctor. So throughout the serial, the Doctor has a familiarity with the monastery due to him visiting several hundred years in the past, with this familiarity becoming important in the last few episodes when he meets Padmasambhava. The two have a friendliness to their meeting, which is something we haven't really seen before, as in the show so far, the Doctor hasn't really encountered people who he's met before. This different dynamic opens up possibilities for the serial, notably having him a captive towards the start and that connection allowing for his release. Although the scenes with Padmasambhava towards the end is when the history is at its best, as I said before. Although due to their limited screen time together, there isn't much between them, but enough to make his death more impactful, which is where this connection becomes truly important, as it acts to help humanise Padmasambhava. There are plenty of other fun scenes with the Doctor, many of the scenes where he's in the cell towards the start and is playing his recorder and trying to talk with anyone, although the funniest scene is this one.
If you really want to capture one of these beasties, think I have an idea that might just work. Victoria, I think this is one of those instances where discretion is the better part of valour. Jamie has an idea, come along.
It's annoying a decent chunk of the funnier moments are missing, like when the Doctor and Jamie are trying to stop the control sphere from returning to a Yeti. Speaking of Jamie, he has a lot more action-packed scenes than previously, with him both fighting a Yeti and later setting a trap for one. While Jamie has always been a more hands-on companion, he hasn't really had the opportunity to do so up till now. We also have many lighter moments with him, notably the ones I've mentioned with the Doctor, but a few with Victoria, although most of them are missing as well. It is good that with this season Jamie is really being used, and we're finally getting to see the companion who was just sort of there for most of the previous season. He's still distinctive from his predecessors, by not being such an action hero like them. Finally we have Victoria, who is used somewhat less than in the previous serial, although does still get many moments where she shines, notably her escape from the cell where she tricks the guard and even Tomney. Unfortunately, the last few episodes aren't that nice to her, with her getting brainwashed for a chunk of episode 5 and then not being too important in the final confrontation. I will admit that her performance while brainwashed is great, with her really selling the single thought and giving the fear a lot of weight in the way she says the lines. Now, due to their connection in the serial, I have to discuss Padmasambhava with the Great Intelligence. While I have talked about the intelligence before, this is where I go a bit deeper into its defeat, as well as its dynamic with other characters. So Padmasambhava's history with the Doctor isn't well fleshed out, beyond having met hundreds of years before, but it does still strengthen the sadness around what's happening to him. So he met the intelligence during meditation, which led to the intelligence using his body to create the Yeti, which took hundreds of years, while also keeping him alive for all that time. This is a clear divide between the two of them, with Padmasambhava being a very nice character who is caring despite what is happening to him, with the intelligence being far more malicious when he comes through. The age of Padmasambhava really comes through in the performance too, with him not necessarily showing off great wisdom but age, with him speaking slowly and quietly. His death isn't an especially powerful moment, but it's clear it saddens the Doctor. On the defeat of the Great Intelligence, it basically comes down to breaking a small glass pyramid which severs its link with Earth. So the majority of the final battle is a battle of wills between the Doctor and the Intelligence, with them trying to keep each other at bay while Jamie and Tomney try to destroy the machinery. It is an interesting change-up, but the reveal of the big machine which controls the Yeti in the back kind of feels out of place given what the intelligence is. While yes, we know the Yeti are robots, the way they are being presented as being controlled by the spheres makes them seem beyond the technology that has been in the show. Even the pyramid, which is the key thing to be destroyed, is nothing like any technology you could imagine, with it basically being an empty glass pyramid. So just having some generic looking machinery does take away from this otherworldly vibe. Although at the same time, given the time period that it's set in, it would have been interesting if it had all been very primitive instead, and seemed like it couldn't possibly be capable of what it was said to be used for. Either way, the final confrontation is a bit of a letdown. With the intelligence defeated, the plot wraps things up. The Doctor and company return to the TARDIS with them having a final discussion with Travers. But while they speak, a creature is spotted nearby climbing over the terrain, with it resembling a Yeti, with the suggestion being that this is in fact an actual Yeti. So it's a good serial with being quite fun and adventurous, with the worst problem being that it's mostly missing. It has some nice effects work, notably the moving spheres, which feel mind-blowing to watch given the time they were done in. Although the serial does have a pacing issue towards the end, with episode 5 feeling very empty, while episode 6 feels a bit stretched out. 5 feels like it's almost all just sorting out the brainwashing of Victoria, which just goes on and on. I think if this was a 5-parter then it would be stronger, as it would keep up the pace of the final 2 parts, which began to bore me a bit. But its impact is clear, from how memorable the Yeti have become, with them returning later this same season. But next time, the TARDIS lands in the near future, where the world is undergoing a climate crisis, and a mysterious warrior is found in the ice. Next time, the Ice Warriors.